Best of r/malicious compliance episode 52. Just happened. My bosses and I are still laughing. We are a small IT company. We manage quite a few clients, though. This one gentleman and one of our busier client sites says that he's tired of being told his emails never arrived at him. We look it up and yes, a couple of legit emails got tangled up in the spam filter. No big deal. We whitelist the sender and release the message. No, not good enough for this guy. He calls back screaming, "I order you to let any email addressed to me come to my inbox." I advise him that I'm going to have to transfer him to IT security and he's going to have to, on a recorded line, say he understands and accepts responsibility for yada yada yada. See, I did that because these guys get thousands of spam emails a day. A while back, several folks, this guy included, decided to give their email address and password to some unsavory website, then did it again, and again, and again. So now they get easily 15-20 plus messages an hour to the entire organization. So he accepts, saying he just wants all his emails to go to him. We allow all messages to him to bypass the spam filter. 3 hours later, he has over 100 new emails, and they keep coming in. He calls back, furious, asking why his spam filter isn't working. "Sir, you asked that all emails addressed to you arrive at your inbox. Update. So right around 4:45 PM today, he's calling our office and the call gets routed to me since I own the ticket." He's livid, shouting so loud my co-workers on the opposite side of the room can hear him. "Whatever you did to my email, I want IT put back to the way IT was. UFCKED out my email and now I can't get any work done because my stupid notifications are going off every second." I calmly reply, "Absolutely. I'll go ahead and turn your spam filtering back on and all these emails will stop." "Good, it's what you should have done in the first place." At the end of it all, nothing changed, and he's happy. God, I love IT work. Edit. To the few of you who have, and the many more that will, seeing as how this picked up a little more steam than I was expecting, commented saying I should be fired. Sure. I'm lucky enough to be at a place that values their employees enough to know that we do not deserve the kind of verbal abuse this guy slings out. A lot of jobs I've been at would have handed me my walking papers the moment I didn't immediately suck this dude off to climax before finding out what his name was. Between me and the security team, we told him at least 4 times that this exact thing would happen, and he said, on a recorded line, "I don't care. I take care of my customers and my bosses enable me to do a damn good job. I believe that's why our company is experiencing very good growth right now." Relax. Final edit. I had to. I logged into our system this morning from home and listened to the recording. It's glorious. Here's the highlights. Security. "So, OP, tells me you're looking to turn off the spam filter?" Client. "I don't even get spam. I'm paying you people for something I don't need." Security. "It's not an added cost, but you're not getting spam because you have a spam filter. If you turn that off, you're going to get flooded with spam emails." Client. "I don't care. I've given you guys an order, and I expect it to be done." Security. "I just need you to be aware that without the spam filter, you're open to getting every spam email that comes to you, some of which may be malicious and could open you up to viruses, malware, and all sorts of software that could compromise your entire network. By going against our suggestions, you understand that our company cannot be held liable for any malicious software that makes it onto your network, infects any of your systems, or causes any system downtime, and that you are claiming sole responsibility for that. Do you understand this?" Client. "Yeah, whatever. Just get it done so I can get off this call." Security. "Sir, I really need to reiterate how much we cannot recommend this action you're going to get." Client. "I don't care. Do what I tell you." Security. "Okay, I'll have OP remove you from the default spam rule, and you'll start receiving any email sent to you. Again, it's going to be a lot. The spam filter actually does catch a lot of spam." Client. "I don't care. Just do IT." Security. "Okay then. Thank you. Have a good day." Click. Edit. The things I get gilded for on Reddit. Thank you for the gold, kind stranger. For Raoul's last edit, I talked with security this morning. This guy has a history with us. Apparently he's been told numerous times that if he calls our employees delinquent fucks or any other form of verbal abuse then the company will be offboarded immediately. Oh, these previous tickets with him are juicy. Edit again. Holy shit. Platinum? Goddamn. Anonymous Redditor. Thanks. My first one. Edit again because promises are a pointlessly easy social contract to break. We're offboarding the company. Apparently when he called back to talk to security about the whole thing, he called the tech a very inflammatory racial slur. Immediate offboarding. By the end of the day, they will not have an IT company. Holy fucking shit, this is huge. The actual final edit. Well, it's been a crazy day, folks. We offboarded the company despite the CEO, not the CFO, which was who this douche was, calling and asking us to reconsider. The CEO of my company told their CEO that these kinds of things are covered in our service agreement, which the CFO had violated on numerous occasions and our complaints had gone unaddressed. We are providing extremely limited service to them for a total of 30 days while they find a new IT company, after which we will send over all our notes and configs and wish them the best of luck. I'm glad we all could share in this little adventure, and I hope we can all do it again sometime. In the meantime, thanks for the rewards, the comma, and the comments that had me laughing. Good night everyone. Thank you. Next. So I've been living in a large Pacific Northwestern city for about 7 years now. After my first 2 years on my own, I decided I was sick of renting rooms. Oh man, I got stories from those, and I decided I wanted to live in a house like a real boy. Only downside is, renting a house is expensive where I live, so I was going to need roommates. I picked a buddy from high school who's an extremely good person. Lazy as hell, not a stellar roommate but not the worst I've had. But I needed someone else to be able to afford a house anywhere near my girlfriend. So my girlfriend introduces me to one of her managers. He's a laid-back guy, 10 years older than me, nice enough, henceforth referred to as M. I met him, helped him move out of his apartment back into his parents' house. Man, I ignored a lot of warning signs in his apartment at the time. Eventually we find a house, after we missed 2 great opportunities because of M. But what's this? M and my BFF have first month's rent, but no security deposit. Enter M's dad. He's filthy rich, he's got an original Shelby Cobra in his garage for reference. He covers both of them. Cue the most obnoxious year of my life. M takes my food without asking, constantly quits jobs because they're not good enough for him, despite having no marketable skills, begs me and my BFF for rent money before having to beg his parents. He asked a visiting friend of mine that he had never met for rent money because that friend mentioned he got a bonus from work. M left a permanent dent in my couch because he wouldn't leave the same spot for days. BFF barely did any chores but otherwise flew under the radar. A year later when moving out, M moves back in with his parents, gets in a fight with my dad when he was helping me move, and then grabs his stuff and leaves. I'm left with an empty 2-story house that's basically destroyed and no one to help me clean it 2 days before inspection. I spent both days coming straight from work to scrub, fix carpets, clean walls, and otherwise make the place spotless. It looked better than it did when we moved in despite stains, holes in the carpet, broken fixtures, all things that didn't cause, but I fixed. I ended up getting $900 of the $1,500 security deposit back for my hours of work and sleepless nights. As I'm awaiting the check I start getting calls/texts from M and his dad. Both are demanding that I give his dad the entire $900 because he spent $1,000 covering their security deposit. This set me off. I was going to call him and talk about it once I got the check in hand. I called his dad, venomously asking if he really meant to try to take all $900 from me. Of course he did. I explained the amount of work that was done by Emmy and that I paid 1/3 of that sec deposit myself. I told him I was going to give him 2/3 of the amount I got back. He didn't like this. A 55-year-old man who owns a $1 million company began eyeing me out, a minimum wage teenage retail worker, over money that could feed me for weeks. So I wrote up an itemized list of everything I did to clean and prep the house for inspection and charged him $300. 1/3 the return security deposit, and cited that I could have easily charged him the full $900 based off the absurd amount of work I did fixing his son's mistakes. People told me to keep all the money. I'm not going to be a petty like M or his dad. Thank you. Next. This happened about 12 months ago. I am a nurse and work in a relatively specialized field. Due to previous financial difficulties, I had taken on a number of additional jobs in the previous few years and had settled on one that was particularly good for me. I was employed casually in a smaller 6-bedded unit in a private hospital. Because of the nature of my specialty, this particular area required 2 nurses in attendance at all times. 2 nurses to 6 patients is a dream ratio and virtually unheard of in private health. To combat this, most hospitals that have beds for this particular specialty area combine them with another ward so that they can staff us down and allow the regular nurses to cover us. However, for some reason, this hospital had located the beds completely separate to any other unit. This meant they had no choice to safely staff us but to roster 2 nurses on at all times, and our manager stood her ground and refused to budge on that requirement. Because I was casually employed, there was always the possibility that my hours could be cut or shifts cancelled at any time. However, because they needed both nurses present at all times, they could not do that. Even if we had no patients in this particular specialty area, they had to keep 2 nurses available in case we needed to admit. If we had no patients at all, some nurses would go on call, but because I relied on public transport/bicycle commuting to get to work, my manager understood that I could not go on call because I could not return to the workplace in a reasonable time, and instead I would be sent to help out in other areas. Our manager had, in addition to her other duties, become the project lead on a large expansion within our facility, and had performed very well in the role. So well, in fact, that when another facility under the same company was expanding, she was headhunted to lead their expansion project as well. She was compelled to a secondment that would require her to live out of state for several months, and as a result, we would be given a new acting manager. To our dismay, we discovered that the acting manager was from a ward where it was well known that the staff could not stand her. Sure enough, within days, she began doing things like cancelling our staff and moving her surplus staff into our area when she was low on numbers and overstaffed, costing them to us, even though they lacked the appropriate training and experience to work in our area. Anything to make her budget look better, which at the same time made our budget look worse. It all came to a head one morning when, after 2 hours of a 12-hour shift, we discharged our last patient. I was literally on the phone finalizing the patient discharge when our acting manager called the other nurse on the shift and instructed both of us to clock out immediately and go on call. Confused, I rang her back. Me, hi AM, it's Schmeikers. I just got a message saying that you want us to clock out and go home. You may not be aware, although our previous manager was, but I take public transport to and from work. I can't be on call. AM, that doesn't matter. You have no patients. I can't pay for you to be on the ward doing nothing and no other areas require help today. I need you to clock off and go home. Me, are you sure? We are halfway through checking the emergency trolley. There is a massive pile of follow-up calls to make and we haven't even stripped the patient room yet. AM, that doesn't matter. Bring me your phone and keys and clock off. Me, what are you going to do if there is an admission? It will take me over an hour to get back. AM, well I'll sit there until you can get back. I was fuming. The other nurse began resealing the emergency trolley and I stopped her. We had been instructed to leave, and leave we would. I marched the phone and keys to our acting manager and handed them over. As I did so, she said, you can't be paid to sit and make phone calls. That has to be done when you have patients. I replied, we are busy with the patients when we have patients. Besides, it's only just past 9 AM, and most of the follow-up calls are to families with children who are busy doing school runs. I wouldn't answer a call from an unknown number before 9 AM. I handed the keys over, clocked off, and began the journey home. I hadn't reached home before I got a message from my other workplace, asking for a nurse for the night shift and offering an overtime payment. Now, I was booked for a day shift at my second job the next day, and I knew we had no theater cases booked, which meant the likelihood of that shift being cancelled was also high. I couldn't afford to sit at home waiting for work if we didn't have patients, but just to be sure, I gave the union a quick call, and they managed to illuminate something wonderful. As a casual employee, I was not entitled to be on call at all. That meant not only could they not ask me to be on call, I was not entitled to the measly $26 allowance that permanent employees received. As soon as I had clocked out, my shift had ended. Armed with that knowledge, I rang my acting manager and informed her that I had been offered paying work that night, and as a consequence, would need to cancel my shift the following day. She was quite hostile, asking, "Do you normally cancel work here to work elsewhere?" I replied, "I don't normally have my shifts cancelled at all, but I am not a charity and cannot sit at home unpaid when I could be paid to work elsewhere. I have a family to support." After this call, I sent a quick email to my usual manager, outlining the acting manager's request and why I had left the ward disorganized, the emergency trolley unsealed, and a stack of work not done, and went to bed to have a nap. I was awoken at approximately 1615 in the afternoon by my wife, looking confused. My acting manager had rung and left a message with her that we were admitting a patient and she required me back at work. I was bemused. The acting manager should not even have been there at that time of the afternoon, and clearly lacked the stones to talk to me directly. No matter. I rang the hospital supervisor. "Me. Hi, it's Schmeikers. I just got a message via my wife that I'm a bit confused about. Apparently there is a patient, and you want me to come into work for a shift?" Supervisor: "That's right. We're admitting to your area. We need you back in." Me: "You know my shift was cancelled, right?" Supervisor: "AM told me you were on call." Me: "Well, I can't be on call. I'm a casual employee. My shift was cancelled. Besides, by the time I've dressed, packed, got on my bicycle, ridden half an hour to my nearest train station, caught a train, changed to a tram, then walked the rest of the way, then showered and changed, it'll be, quick check of the time, 1830. My shift was meant to end at 19:30. I don't think I'm going to be much help to you." I heard the sound of the phone being covered, and a muffled voice, before shouting and ranting began in the background. It was my acting manager, still clearly there and clutching her pearls about how unreasonable it was that it would take 2 hours for me to return to work. As the ranting continued, I spoke on the phone again. "Supervisor, it's Schmeikers. I know you have AM shouting at you in the background, but right now I'm the person you need to be listening to, because I called you. AM is well aware of how long it takes me to return to work, because I told her this morning. She knew when she asked me to clock off that I would not be returning to work. I'm sorry she gave you the impression that I could be on call, but I cannot. Now, as I am not able to assist you any further and I am not on the clock, I will be ending this conversation." And I put the phone down. I got a couple of confused texts about why I wasn't working the next day and WTF had happened on the ward from the night staff when they arrived and began resealing the emergency trolley and arranging for after-hours bed cleans. I had a week off after that. Unfortunately, this particular manager appears to be Teflon coated, but I've never had a shift cancelled since. Thank you. Next. This happened years ago at a pharmacy in Spain I worked at. The opening time was 9:30, 13:30 and 1700 hours, 2000 hours. Overtime hours were never paid and I was fed up of systematically leaving past 1400 hours and 2200 hours. One day, the owner had the occurrence of opening from that day at about 15 minutes earlier, because 2+ hours of not paid extra work wasn't enough time for customers to come. The excuse was that the health office recently ordered that all pharmacies be open at 9:15. Open times are already regulated, either 9:30, 9 o'clock if open for 12H or 24H open. Of course, I wasn't going to be paid for that extra time. That was the last straw. So, since the pharmacy had to be open 15 minutes early, I could use that time to do some bureaucracy that I had building up. I had to call the farm council for some issues, so instead of waiting until we were open, I decided to call at 9:15. Which was earlier than the official authorized opening time, but the office already told us to be open by that hour, right? I identified as the pharmacist working at that pharmacy. They inquired into why we were open before the authorized time, and then the rest is history. They had to sell the pharmacy after that to pay the fine. Edit. Wording. Some clarification. You have to have a license to own a pharmacy. You can get it in a tender or by buying a pharmacy and its license attached. The official open time, regulated by law, was 9:30. Boss lied about being ordered by the office to open at 9:15. Edit 3. More wording. I'm ESL. Please advise me of any mistakes. P. Edit 4. Thanks for all proofreading. Thank you. Next. So, last year I worked for quite possibly the worst corporate retail store for the worst phone company, and at the time I had the worst manager. Really was a great situation all around. When that manager took over shortly after I had started, she decided that she didn't really like the official scheduling app. It was on our phones. Most of the time it was auto-generated. It let us request time off, see our time off balances. In fact, it was the only functional application that existed in that godforsaken company. But she didn't like it, so she refused to use the app. Instead, she had a spreadsheet that she made each week that was promised to us a week ahead of time, but we generally wouldn't actually get it until the day before that week's round of shifts started. Enough background. Onto the malicious compliance. Since she didn't ever use the official scheduling app, time off requests through there generally fell on deaf ears. So, anytime I needed time off, I'd make the request through there in the official channels, and then email her. She was notoriously strict on any time off. The needs of the store outweigh the needs of the poor suckers working there. Except for her, 1/3 of each month was spent flying out somewhere for her vacation. On this particular instance, I needed time off to go visit my grandma and my cousin in California for my cousin's graduation party. I made sure to ask months in advance, and had my grandma buy the tickets ahead of time so I could use that as an excuse to say I had to have the time off. I email her all this 4 months in advance, and annoy her until I get email confirmation that, yes, I can have a whole 2 days off, in addition to my normal 2 days. So finally the time comes. I go down to California. The high school graduation party was great, and I'm on day 3, the day before I leave to go back to Oregon. That's when I get a call from my manager. MG, hey, where are you? Me, is this some kind of trick question? MG, no, you're 20 minutes late to your shift. Me, no I'm not. I'm not in today. As it turns out, Ms. Manager didn't send out this week's schedule until after I had left the state. I didn't bother to bring my work phone with me to receive her made-up schedule, so I didn't get a chance to correct her before the phone call. MG, yes you are, and if you don't get your butt in here in the next 20 minutes, you're getting a write-up and 2 attendance points. Me, that's going to be kind of hard considering I'm still in California. Do you care to come pick me up? MG, what are you doing in California? She's panicking, and I don't blame her. There's 5 employees that work for that store, including her, and generally in the middle of the week I was scheduled to close solo. Me, I'm visiting my grandma. Remember, I emailed you about this months ago and you approved it? At this point she's furious that after a long day of sitting in her office watching Netflix, she may have to close the store. MG, we're going to need to have a serious talk about this when you get back. There was one good thing about this phone company I worked for. 1. It was union. We're supposed to get our schedules 3 weeks in advance via the app. She shouldn't be trying this, because it's the same reason she's not trying to railroad the openers into staying for my shift, because they're both incredibly trigger happy with the union. Me, okay we can have a talk about it, but I'm going to have to make a quick call to union rep, so he can be there. MG, wah, me, because you allowed me the time off per your emails. MG, well, you have to follow the schedule. Me, the one we received last minute through unofficial channels? Me, because I take screenshots of when you send those and what dates they cover. I'm not sure the union would appreciate. MG, enjoy your days off. Click, thank you. Next. In the early 2000s I bartended at a live music venue. Sometimes the bands would play a little longer and people on the dance floor would miss last call. They would beg for one last drink, but not worth losing a liquor license over. One time this younger woman wanted to buy a shot for her new friend. She begged as I was cleaning up and I kept telling her number. She then drops a $20 on the bar and says, 2 shots of anything, your choice. Keep the change. So I relent. I say fine, snag the $20 and go grab the shaker. I then whip up a Shirley Temple, extra grenadine, put it into 2 shot glasses and serve it up. They chug them down. thank me, praise how they were the tastiest shots they have had and walk away satisfied. Everyone walked away happy, but they did just pay $20 for 2 ounces of Sprite. I put the $20 in the tip jar and split it with my co-workers. Thank you. Next. I work for a bank that I won't name. Part of my job is largely opening new accounts. We have little mini scanners on our desks. When we open an account, ideally, we would open our program, feed the ID into the scanner, and it would automatically take the information from the ID and input it into the computer. Now unfortunately, our company won't pay for the nice scanners. The scanners we have are garbage and don't properly scan things, so usually we manually enter the information and use the printer to copy the ID. We've been doing this for over a year now. Cut to first quarter of 2020. Corporate sends out a harshly worded email that from here on out, they will not accept our printer copies of the ID. We must use the desk scanners. I call tech. They do some stuff with my scanner and tell me it's working. A few hours later I start opening accounts and the scanner still isn't working. I'm not one to turn customers away, so I do it the manual way. I call tech after and they tell me it's a flaw of the scanners, that the other more expensive model is almost perfect, but corporate won't shell out for them. Sucks, but tech tries to fix it and I get off the line. This happens for the next 5 accounts I have that day, and for the next week. I call tech. There's a ton of tickets. The issue persists, but I won't turn away customers and keep doing it manually. I get an email from corporate 3 days ago saying that I immediately need to start using the desk scanner and stop entering information in manually. I'm being audited. My accounts are being examined, and if I keep being insubordinate I might get written up. I call the department and say, hey, our scanners don't work. I can't use it. They basically tell me tough shit. So I stop opening accounts manually. For the last few days, if someone comes in to open an account, I try to scan their ID, and if the scanner doesn't work I basically tell them sorry they won't let me open it manually and give them the corporate complaint line. I turn away countless people. They're irritated. It's a mess. Guess who got the notification today that we're getting the better scanners in on Monday?